Well,
Tune fan. Tune. Yeah, sorry.
I mean, it's not up to Owen standards. Owen is an amazing DJ, but it is free, and free matters. And
free is good. Free is very good. Yes, so, Incompetech is one of the greatest things on the internet, as many of us know.
So, hail and well met, fellow travelers. We have a exclusive interview with probably the most Renaissance man in the Savage Worlds community, Owen Lean, all the way from England. I mean,
most bored man maybe is what is the reason for it all. I'm not sure, but yeah, we'll talk about that later maybe.
But you're an amazing dude. You do what? You do magic, you busk, you are a radio DJ, you do cooking demonstrations online. I mean,
oh my gosh.
I mean that was more just something to amuse me while I was cooking during lockdown. Really, I'll put Facebook Live on that.
I mean, I was the carbonara was fantastic. It was like last minute. What is in the freeze? Carbonara. It was good.
That's was amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I do love cooking. That's to be said.
Nice. So tell us, you worked on the ETU Study Abroad project. Which of the chapters did you write, sir?
Believe it or not, being from Great Britain, the chapter I wrote was the Great Britain one. So that would be Ascalon University, as I've been sneakily hinting at the name at for about 2 years now.
It's been a hot minute, right? So, I mean, like, your kid, is it Rory, the one who's in the original video, is about to turn 4?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes. So it was, and he was only a couple of months old, I think, when I started researching this, and I started researching it pretty soon after I got the call, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, it's been a long time. Hello, Jody. How are you?
Lander and I are fighting over who gets to share comments.
It's all good now. I will relinquish the throne. You have vanquished me.
It's taken a while to get from initial ask to concept to research to print, but I'm very exciting. It does fly when you're researching it.
Yeah. So with that, like, let's go into the intro video, and we will play that, and so we can get you are a man ahead of his time, knowing that streaming and video was going to be the way of the future, and took some great video where you visited some of the sites that you used for the inspiration for your chapter. So we'll give that a play right now, and then we'll ask you some questions about it.
Okay.
Hello. So my name's Owen Lean. I'm been commissioned to write the English part of East Texas University Study Abroad book, and I'm currently road tripping. I'm doing a road trip, a trip on the road, which is why we call it a road trip. It's logical English, really. We're road tripping to a place called Uffington. I'm a little self-conscious in front of the camera today because I haven't shaved for a while, and I've got this horrible sty in my eye. So I look a little bit like the illegitimate love child of Jackson Green and the Needler, but yeah, whatever. But it's a 2-hour drive, which in England is a long distance. People in Texas, I think, consider that like a trip to the corner shop, but for us, it's a long way. I mean, a not very well put together car. It's my old man's car, and as you can see, the windows are held together with duct tape. So it's a bit of a level 1 adventure. This surviving the trip to Uffington, but we will carry on, and hopefully we will prevail.
Give us a tune on the old Joanna, will you?
So we're driving through one of the villages on the way here. We're very, very near our destination now. We're driving through a village called Lambourne. It's and we've been seeing stuff for horse racing everywhere. There's an equine hospital here. There's several places for stud, where horses are put out to stud, and stables. It's made me think possibly a horse racing related Savage Tale might be a thing to put in the setting that I'm putting together. So just behind me over there, you can see Dragon Hill, which is going to be a focal point. That is apparently where St. George slew the dragon of legend. A legend which completely ignores the fact that St. George was actually Turkish and never came to England. And that dragons don't actually exist. So the reason I like to do all this research is because I really like to ground the campaigns that I write in reality in some way. It's sort of becoming my thing as a role-playing game author, I guess. In Horror for the Holidays, my other ETU adventure, the whole thing is based on something that really happened in Texas, and you end up travelling to Eastland, the place where it took place at the very end. Likewise, the recent Deadlands adventure I put out called All the Purdy Little Horses is based in a real town, and we use the real history in that. So to actually come to the place that I'm writing about and to be able to take what I see and actually use it is pretty cool. So right here at the peak of the large sort of hills near Uffington is the remains of this Bronze Age, Iron Age castle. So yeah, this fort that I'm walking through right now dates back to about 300 BC. Now underneath, the ground I'm trotting, there probably still, I don't know, bones and spirits and the kind of stuff that can make the student's life hell should someone decide it was a really good place to build a university campus. So we're just about to take a little walk to the White Horse. My son has decided to woken up. I'm going to look for where there was strange things going on. Chalk thing. Could have been all kinds of occult practices and human sacrifice, eh? Yay! Yeah! It's a big smile for human sacrifice. So this is the White Horse of Uffington over here, which again dates back to around the same sort of time, 300 BC odd. You can't really see it from this angle. And there isn't really, the best place to see it clearly is from space, basically. But it does look sort of like a horse. However, it wasn't referred to as a horse until around 1100 AD. And it could be something else. It could be a deer, it could be a dog, maybe a dragon? Dragon without wings, maybe? I don't know, pushing it a bit. Maybe it can grow wings in the scenario when if there is a dragon and the dragon rises from the hill, then at that point maybe chalk wings can just suddenly appear on the thing. That could be quite cool. You can see just here there's this single hawthorn tree just standing at the top of the hill. And hawthorns are meant to be linked to fairies. Superstitious Gaelic people won't bring them into their houses. So I can probably do something with that too. So I've come into the village in order to find out any local history that I might be able to weave into any savage tales that I write. We found out that the poet John Betjeman used to live here in a house just over there. And so I'm thinking maybe some kind of tale where the students discover a hidden secret in a Betjeman poem that points to someone in the village, maybe into his house itself. Otherwise I'm going to go and ask around, and where better to start asking about or get a quest than in a local tavern. The pub were actually quite helpful, although they didn't know any of the local history there themselves. They've put me in touch with the local historian. So as soon as I get back home I'm going to email her and hopefully find out a load of urban myths and tales. Basically what I did with Horror for the Holidays, getting in touch with someone who knew lots of spooky stuff that happened in around Dallas, and writing stuff about that. So we're going to go on and have a look for other places now and see what we can find. So seeking more stories and adventure, I come to the next place one goes to after a tavern on a quest. Of course, the local church. The clerics are always able to assist you in finding weird things to do, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. We just met the vicar who gave us a load of information about things that happened here. This church actually dates back from 1250, apparently, like really old, and there's all kinds of stuff inside. Apparently, Thomas Hughes, who wrote a book called Tom Brown's School Days, lived here. There's lots of draconic imagery inside the church, which is fantastic. So that's it then. It's been a pretty productive day actually. I've come up with lots of really good ideas from what I've seen. So as is, I've already got like concepts for 7 or 8 savage tales just from what I've seen. So yeah, looking forward to the writing process now, but first I have to survive the journey back along the M25, which is not a happy place. It's just not.
I got a ferret, please. fruit.
Ravens fight, put on the blue and white. No?
There you go. Oh. Yeah.
And we are back. That was wonderful, Owen. Much fun. I'm so glad that you had the presence of mind of filming that. But and then the comments during the chat were great too. So yes, Jeremy Clarkson called. Apparently, that was an inspiration for one of those, truck across England. They call them a beater in America. The car that's just.
Okay.
Right. It's taking a beat. It's taking a beating, and it's ready for the.
It's ready for the chop shop.
Right, the chop shop. Let's see. What other good questions? Uffington, the jewel of Oxfordshire.
Indeed, yes. So I've actually appeared to have completely frozen on my side here. So I'm just going to try opening this in a new tab. Hopefully, I'll still be there.
Okay.
Well, if you're not, we'll just have your lovely frozen face. So
yeah, let me just trying to because right now I'm getting no monitor and won't be able to see the lovely things. Although actually, what I could do is just turn the. I know I can't even open the chat, so I can't see what was being said. Yeah. We're going to try a reload and see if that works. All right. Could be a bad idea.
Sounds good.
Apologies if you lose me for a moment, but.
It'll be fine.
The wonders of modern technology.
You I seem to still be there, am I? That's interesting.
Oh, yes, your audio's still coming in. So we're good.
Audio's there, that's good. Don't know quite how that's happening, but it's because the browser's certainly gone. But as long as you can hear me, we've got something going on. Now, if I tap that and go to open it in the browser. Okay.
Jody left a comment during the video that that counts as a hill, not where we live, which is funny because where Jody lives, like what Jody calls a hill, doesn't count for. There we go. We are back. The North Carolina hills don't really count like much of hills or maybe even mountains. Like there's a wonderful thing. Like there's I was traveling to the East Coast and I saw a bumper sticker that said "Ski Pennsylvania." And I'm looking around. We drove across the whole state of Pennsylvania, and my whole response was, where could you ski anywhere in this state? I don't see a single mound that rises above the horizon, let alone a mountain.
Try Australia sometime. Central Australia is it's nothing. I've never seen anything like it. I drove across it on the way back from the Adelaide Fringe, going to Melbourne for the festival there. God, that would have been like 7 years ago now, and just extraordinary experience because you can see, it's the first time in my life I've ever sort of felt not worried about the speed I was going at because
you just nothing to crash into.
You could see it hours before it reached you. So those routes do come out of nowhere. But yeah, that is a hill in southern England, that just is the name of that particular hill.
A wee hill at this point. Everything in Scotland, our tour guide called a wee hill.
A wee hill, yes. The little mound on top of part of a very hilly area. If you go there, it's all hills. The White Horse is on the side of a real hill. Things, but yeah, we don't. Yeah. It's a reasonably hilly, bumpy country, I suppose. It's not so much as Colorado, certainly. I know you guys go.
There's no 14ers to hike, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and being the Americans that we are, we also have 14ers that you can drive up to the top of. So no hiking required. You can just drive up and then claim you've been on top of a 14er because that's a little more my speed. But
you can't get to the top of that hill by car. You can go quite a way up, and we did, and parked just sort of in a place we probably weren't meant to park to. Bring your kid to Sacrifice Day, yeah. It was just called a friend of mine, so I'll allow that. But yeah, it's just a wonderful coincidence that was the moment he decided to grin when I said human sacrifice. But yeah, that was.
Well, I mean, today is kind of human sacrifice day. we announced the Savage Cruise, and there are like all 3 destinations for the Savage Cruise this next year. We're leaving out of Orlando on January 3rd, and we're hitting up Cozumel, which has ancient Mayan ruins, Costa Maya, which has ancient Mayan ruins, and Belize, which has ancient Mayan ruins, all of which, and cenotes, all of which could be filled with, child sacrifice, human sacrifice. So, it's a thing.
If I remember rightly, and I could be wrong about this, but I think to the Mayans, getting sacrificed was an honor. It was if you won the sort of the ball game they had, your prize was getting sacrificed.
Being
different situation.
Playing a little footy back in those days was not. It was not a longevity career. You would not be a Pele or a.
Exactly.
If you were good, you'd get sacrificed, and the funny thing is, it's kind of like basketball too, right? It's got a mixture of soccer and basketball, because instead of being a goal, there was a round hoop. You'd have to kick the ball through.
Disorderly. I'm trying to remember where I saw, because I've never been to South America, so I can't have actually seen them in real life. But I certainly was looking them up. Oh, I remember why, because I was doing adventures in South America for the for Deadlands when I was running it. That's why.
Oh, nice.
I was looking it up. And then I've been looking it up very recently. Today, in fact, for something else I'm on, but that's an unrelated project. Anyway, back to you.
So, have you ever? You mentioned Australia. Have you ever written any adventures in Australia inspired by your trip there?
I haven't written one. I have run adventures in Australia, again in Deadlands. I ran a LARP for 3 years, basically, a Deadlands LARP, using Savage Worlds, which is completely possible now. I mean, live action roleplay used to be, either you're hitting people with foam weapons or you're doing the whole Vampire the Masquerade shaky fist thing, which is so broken and such a terrible rule system. They've got a new variant, which is a bit better, but anyone who's played MET will tell you it's not a fair way of doing things. But now we have smartphones with dice roller apps. Mm-hmm. You can laugh with any reasonably simple system, and Savage Worlds is very laughable in that respect. There's a few things you have to trim down a bit, particularly when it comes to initiative, but if you're going into mass combat with the entire venue that much, you're not doing something right. But we had a lot of sort of in between the main game scenes, and as the players got to year 3, they're walking around on like 200 plus XP, so the limit to what things they can do become very small. So trips through the hunting grounds to places like Australia were just that was a normal Tuesday by that point. I should have stopped the LARP after 2 years, really, but it was a good experience doing it, I can tell you.
So what you're telling us is that when we finally get the Savage Expedition to come to the UK, you're going to host like the Battle of Hastings or Agincourt or maybe Alger.
None of that historical reenactment stuff. We'll do something. It'll have to be something absolutely mad. And actually, to be honest, if you guys are coming for it, if it's going to be a big thing with all the Savage Worlds fans coming over, it'd have to be a flagship setting. So I don't know, maybe Dark Ages, maybe Deadlands Dark Ages.
People are quaking right now because people have been asking about Deadlands Dark Ages so much. So
we're gonna get emails. We're getting emails.
We're gonna get emails. Yeah. I'm gonna get emails. You're not getting any emails, Landauer. It's all me.
That's true. Yes, send Chelsea nice emails that include certificates for coffee and chocolate. Those are the best kind.
Support my stored habit.
I do a one-shot Savage Worlds LARP, which is just a single thing as opposed to long 3-year campaigns. So I'd happily put together one of those. I love doing them. The one-shots are usually quite bizarre. We did we did the first one we did actually was a Deadlands thing. It was Deadlands Hell on Earth in a very strange alternative universe, and then the other two were slightly more batty, respectively. Rock and roll space opera type thing, slightly based on the kind of Rocky Horror Picture Show type thing.
Oh my god, I kind of need your playlist for this.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was fantastic.
was very much inspired actually by Telstar, the track by the Tornadoes, which just still for me is one of the greatest instrumentals ever recorded. I think it's absolutely amazing. It just captures that, even to someone who wasn't there, speaking to people like my parents and so on, is this what people felt, when I'm hearing from this? And they said yes, because it just sort of captures that whole hope of the space age that was just starting in the early 60s. The Cold War was becoming such a horrible thing, and this idea of moon landings and escaping to the stars and stuff like that. And then this mad song written by a completely insane human, by the way. Look him up. There's a movie on it. There's a movie of Joe Meek's life story, and that tells you everything. But even they didn't need to embellish a thing. That guy was special in a disturbing crazy way. Yeah.
I mean, some of the best artists are. I mean, I think for comedy, they say you need to have some kind of distance to the rest of humanity to make good comedy. And I think for great art, there's something similar there too. That just your perspective needs to be just different enough that you're not, you're giving people something that's unique. So, speaking of being unique and being an artist, we have demands from chat about there being quests in pubs. So, did you happen to have pub quests in your ETU Study Abroad? Do you remember when?
So, the pub that you see there, the Fox and Hounds, is in the book, I believe. It certainly was in the copy I submitted. It doesn't feature in a big way. It's just a location that is mentioned as a place in Uffington. And there's a couple of, I think I put a couple of little sort of tiny sentence long seeds as part of that like the bar, that it's often frequented by students. And there's, I need to point out there is no university anywhere near Uffington in reality. So it's a fictionalized version of Uffington where this tiny village, I mean, it is minuscule, we're talking, we're right out in the back of beyond type thing, 5 people and a pub type settlement, is in this world is obviously turned into a student village, as it were, a place that is all, and so the pub would presumably be doing a lot of business from students coming down, though there is a pub on campus as well.
Beautiful. There always has to be a pub in walking distance. See, here's the thing. Yeah. I watch a ton of Midsummer Murders. It's hilarious. Exactly every episode literally revolves around a pub or a village fete, or there are those key classic things that we see that always happen in every single episode, so much that I've made bingo boards to see if we can win prizes.
And now having watched that, that the average murder rate of a small country village in the UK
is like 7 people a week.
But yeah, wonderful, aren't they? I know. We do love our cozy murders there.
Right, but everything revolves around like the pub. All the gossip is around the pub. So as soon as I got to the UK, as I landed in Scotland, I was like, I want to get to the hotel and I want to walk to a pub. And of course, we're in the Isles. I was on the Isle of Skye, and they're like, the nearest pub is a 2-mile walk through a cow field. So you can't walk through there because the cows will charge you. So you have to drive through the field instead and hope the cows don't charge you to get to the pub.
Must have been a very nice pub. Oh, who reached out to me about this? Oh, Preston, because I'd already reached out to him a long time ago about a Horror for the Holidays, of course, and that's a long story which I'll happily tell. Just on the pubs thing, I mean, I before we move on, I can say that it is reasonably accurate. British life normally, not like now, does revolve around pubs to quite a disturbing and sad extent, in my opinion.
They're beautiful, though. They're so cozy and warm and lovely, and meeting people there is so easy.
And pub food.
You were in a country pub on an isle, very different situation to a London pub here. That's not going to happen in your standard Wetherspoons, because we have chain pubs here.
You have chain pubs? Yeah. There are chains of pubs?
Yeah, you go into a city and all the pubs are chains, basically. They're like the same menu, the same things like that. Yeah, and the most popular is called JD Wetherspoons because it's very, very cheap. And you can get But yeah, as a teetotaler, I was always really kind of annoyed that pubs were just so important. Like you don't go out to the cinema in England. You go to the cinema and then to the pub. You don't go out to a play. You go to the play and then to the pub. Whatever happens, the pub has to feature at some point. And come on, very sad. But yeah, I got.
We had an earlier comment about Dave and Buster's, and Dave and Buster's is the American equivalent of the chain pub.
It's not even close to a good pub though. And I mean, in Scotland, every pub has tartan carpet and like an oak bar, right? So it's kind of the same thing, but they don't feel like a chain.
Yeah, but no, a beautiful country pub, particularly on Ireland, is a very different situation. And also in further north you go, the friendlier people are, and so you get that. It's very like being in Ireland, except Dublin, where I was for 4 years. That's again, the city is very different from the rest of the country.
Really?
I mean, back then at least, population of 4 million people in the country, 1 million of them in that one city. You do the math, Whereas everywhere else, everyone knows your name, and everyone is so happy and friendly. Dublin, everyone's unhappy, drinking. I actually have a sentence in Study Abroad that that the students will be very happy to find that the legal drinking age is 18 in the United Kingdom, but may be shocked by just how wasted you have to get before you're considered drunk in the UK.
Really? What?
High tolerances.
I am at sea level when I come down there, so I can drink 4 beers and get wasted instead of 2 beers and get wasted. So
you're not wasted. You're not wasted at 4 beers. You are mildly tipsy, is how we would call that state in the UK. Here you get to the point where someone is so drunk, they're on their bar stool, they're so drunk they cannot physically sit anymore, fall over backwards, gurgling, unable to speak. In England, everyone celebrates, picks him up, puts him on the bar, and buys him another drink.
No!
That wouldn't happen in the US.
It would not happen in the US. You'd be with the police.
Jerry's really drunk.
Contributing to the delinquencies rules.
You have to get to the point where I know from my travels in America and Canada, if someone gets that drunk once, people think, oh God, does he have a problem? Does he need to go to AA? Well, yeah, if you don't get that drunk 3 or 4 times a week, you're a teetotaler in the UK. I mean, I'm exaggerating for comic effect here, obviously, but yeah.
And that's the weird thing about Canada, right? Is the phrase teetotaler? You guys take tea really, really seriously. So yeah, I mean, like here, when you call someone a teetotaler, it's like we don't take tea seriously. So being a teetotaler is like is more dismissive. But like
now, totalism, I believe, actually is an American phrase. I believe that comes from the Women's Christian Temperance Union.
Probably why. Right? We throw your tea in the harbor and then go all,
Well, so, I mean, I believe the tea in teetotal comes from temperance.
Perfect. Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
What happens when you get an author on the street?
Coined it, though she is my sort of big temperance hero of history, of Wild West history. One of my ambitions is to get her officially into a Deadlands adventure once and get her in there as a canon NPC. Because I mean, the WCTU were dodgy, particularly towards the end. But at the beginning, in Francis Willard's time, it was a very progressive movement, and it was focusing a lot more on women's rights and children's rights than things. And she was a huge battler for feminism in the Western era. So if that's something that needs to be looked at more, kind of in the Weird West, women voting and things like that, suffrage, then who best person to bring in as an NPC, and she'd totally be a blessed because she was because she was very, very faithful and a lesbian. I mean, the more you look up about her, the more fun you can have with that character.
That's fantastic.
That's why I love historical settings, right? Like real life people are so much more strange and cool than
things you can make up. Yes, absolutely. Real life is strange and fascinating.
I just had to say that I can't speak to Clint anymore. He's just the ultimate heresy.
So we do know that Clint and Jody, the only tea is sweet tea, which is almost like you have to keep adding sugar until it precipitates out of the solution. And
so, in fairness, actually, most people in the UK put quite a bit of sugar in their tea, but it's hot tea with milk and two sugars. You know.
So being a Britisher that you are, when do you put the milk in the tea? I mean, what is the proper? I know this is.
What's the order?
I wrote a song about this actually. That was then recorded by Ralph Shaw, the king of the ukulele. I'll have to link it.
Oh my god, we got another ukulele.
You're invited. Tea, but yeah. And Steel, was that his name? Sorry, I just
Steel Brock, yes.
Steel Bronc, yes. You have the right idea there. Darjeeling, first flush, loose leaf Darjeeling. That's a serious cup right there. I'm actually not much of a black tea drinker anyway myself. I love green tea. That's what I tend to go for. But yeah, I appreciate someone who knows proper tea. I've been the proper tea is theft apparently.
See, no one in chat is like my favorite British tea is PG Tips.
Okay, so PG Tips is a brand.
Yeah.
What you're looking at there, Darjeeling, Lady Grey, Earl Grey, and Lapsang are all types of tea leaf.
Oh, okay.
PG Tips is a brand owned by Unilever, who which if you ever wanted to invest in tea, you pretty much have to buy stocks in Unilever. That's your best chance.
Unilever is like a body wash company. What?
Oh, they own loads of stuff.
So PG Tips is like the UK version of like Lipton. Lipton is our local conglomerate.
Yeah,
Lipton or Celestial.
I mean, Lipton do tea bags as well, but PG Tips is basically it's a company that do tea bags with a mixed blend of teas, which is just
so I have trash taste in tea. Is that what we're getting at?
Lando, I'll take you to high tea and we'll fix it.
Most people in Britain, when they drink tea, they drink a steaming cup of Builders is the word of it. Builders tea is what you call just a bag of blended stuff with the milk. That's a normal cuppa is going to be something like PG Tips. So Lipton, we've really gone down. We've dived deep on the tea thing here. I've just realized.
I mean, we're getting authentic though. I mean, it's like I don't know if I'm a big fan of the bergamot though, so that's why the Earl Grey and
Earl Grey is delicious.
Whether it's Twinings,
it's like my standard breakfast tea is Earl Grey, and then I drink a lot of Chinese tea, like genmaicha, Japanese tea.
This is exactly what everyone tuned in for. I was going to say, I think, exactly. Jody asked about how I was approached by this. It started when I was researching stuff for Deadlands. Actually, I proposed to Shane and to Matt a setting book based on the Dallas that had been created for the LARP that I've been running, basically. So we set it in Dallas. 75% because I wanted to do a introduction video thing where I filmed people giving sort of look to the camera and cheesy smiles and putting the Dallas theme song over it, which I did. That was most of the reason I set it in Dallas. But,
where's that video?
I'll get it for you. I'll get you it. It's on the web. It's on the web. If you search Deadlands Highway to Hell on YouTube, you should find it. It's Deadlands Highway to Hell. See if you can find it. You might be able to put it in here. It's only a minute long. And as a result of that, I did a lot of research into other things in Dallas, about the real Dallas. I thought, I should put in stuff about the real Dallas rather than just the fictional one I made. And through that, discovered the legend of the Santa Claus robber. And reading that, I was like, well, it's 23. It's not really going to fit Deadlands, but it could work in ETU. And so I approached Matt. This is after I'd done a one sheet for them and stuff. The taxidermist tale. That's a whole different story. Jesus, that ceiling. Okay, sorry, that profanity. I wasn't PG-13 rating, but yeah. I approached Shane and said, "Who do I talk to about ETU?" And he said, "You need to talk to Presto." So I set up Presto, and I pitched to him this, and that resulted in Horror Holidays happening. And then he came back to me a year later, was it maybe, saying, "Yeah, we're working on a study abroad thing. We want you to do Britain." And I was like, "Yes." Does the needler poop in the woods? Yes, I'm down. Yeah.
Owen does Britain, but not as sexy as you think. So before we get to the actual, like, we're not going to spoil all of it, but the you do have a newer in British setting that you've recently published, Barkington Halls, right?
Barkington Halls, yes. That so yeah, that came out of a one shot as well. Actually, that was something I did for some friends of mine. They were having a Halloween party, and I just had an idea. I'd love to do a Savage World setting that's just like, the kind of awful, pretentious public school kids that I grew up with, basically.
And in Britain, we call private schools. You call them public schools, like we
call them private schools as well, actually. Basically, the same thing. But yeah, the one that you pay for, and the one that is going to be populated by the elite, basically. So Barkington Halls could be easily transferred to an American preppy private school thing as well. I think no problems at all.
Like
yeah, exactly.
Exeter, Philip Andover,
yes, and that and I then the one shot went down so well with the people that played and said, "Would you like me to run a campaign of this?" And they went, "Yes." So I was like, "Okay, fine." So I did that, and then that I thought, you know what, I'm going to write this down, because this is fun. And it didn't take too long to write into something, because I knew it was never, something like that it doesn't have the legs to be a full setting book. And if I was going to start publishing on my own and do an ace thing, I wanted to start with something kind of small and build up. Apart from anything to do Kickstarters, you need a reputation. That's what Kickstarter does. It turns reputation into money. It doesn't. It can, if you're lucky, you can get your thing can go viral, and you can make a decent take on whatever it is you're putting in, as long as you're not too ambitious. But really, to really kickstart a project for the amount you want it to, it's good to have built a reputation up first. So I'm operating at quite a lot on Barkington Halls still, because I spent quite a bit on art and the layout, because I wanted to make sure it looked good. But by my estimates, I should be even in about 5 years on that one. And, it's an ebook. Now it's up there. I don't have to do anything. That's happened. I did that before with magic books back in the day. In time, that's going to happen. And I've got and hopefully those who've looked at it will now know I can make quality products. So when I ask for stuff about my next setting, and that'll be different. But yes, Barkington Halls is similar in a way, in that it is obviously an institute of learning. As I will say to absolutely everyone, if you want to play one institute of learning, if you only buy one institute of learning game in Savage World, For the Love of God by ETU, that's not be silly. But if you buy two, then this it's a lot sillier in some ways. I think Tongue is much more firmly in cheek, and the player characters aren't necessarily. They're the good guys, but they're not nice so much in Barkington Halls. You are playing a really pretentious, really privileged young kid who believes they know the answer to everything, type thing, and there's a zombie pig, and that's just so off-putting for us to have to deal with that. God.
Well, that's very Deadlands. We just had Shane was just on, and there's the zombie pigs of Cochise County. So zombie pigs and chaotic pigs, and
you can't go wrong with zombie pigs. You really can't. No. But then there's the other attitude that some of the pupils might have towards having to deal with supernatural stuff, which is, this is just hot banter. And banter it's just something Americans can't really easily understand. It's not just the whole idea of witty exchange of insult, which is sort of what it is. Banter is a lifestyle. It becomes so much bigger than that. The whole idea of going for a cheeky Nando's is banter, and that just stopping into to a particular chain of chicken restaurants on the way home from a school trip. And I know probably there's a couple of British people watching this who, hearing me talking about banter in this way, are finding it hilarious, and every American is going right over the head. And the fact that that is happening is itself banter. If that makes sense. I actually say in Barkington Halls, if you don't know what banter means, Google it. Just try not to spend too long falling down the rabbit hole, because it's sort of one of these kind of offline memes that have just turned into thing of that. Yeah, banter is a lifestyle.
I think you need to give classes, Owen. I mean, I think we need to add another sobriquet to your middle name, and banter tutor, banter badger.
This is what we need. We need an exchange students guide.
The exchange students guide to banter. Yes, it does come up in Study Abroad. I do mention it, particularly because when we're looking at local supernatural things, I talk about how, you know, no matter what some people may think of themselves, some students may think of themselves, the puka are the original kings of banter and always will be. You know, puka are trickster spirits. If you know Midsummer Night's Dream, Puck is a puka, and that wonderful James Stewart film Harvey is a puka.
I just got a new name, Bantower.
Bantower. You're now Chris Bantower. Yes,
I approve, Paul. I approve.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Well done, Paul.
Oh my God! Now I've got a wonderful excuse to be more cunning with my words. Yes. So tell us. So now, I mean, I think we've warmed up everybody. Tell us, in your adventure, where do people start? What's the first the first thing that tips them into the weirdness in the UK?
I actually start them on the plane. I thought, let's do an adventure with them arriving, because there's, I mean, apart from anything, they're going to want to go to London. They're going to want to see. The players are going to want to have their students go wild in London at some point, and they could do that. By just traveling into London. It's only 2 hours drive if they've got access to a car, which, you know, in England, 2 hours, I'm not doing that. You know, US, very different place.
I have to drive an hour and a half to get to land hours, so normal.
Boom, yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course, not so easy to get back at night when you're very drunk to Uffington, but yeah.
No drunk driving, students. None.
No. And public transport is a little bit difficult to get to there. But there is a bus, though, that operates the exciting township of Swindon nearby, which I think people will find very funny from Britain, because everyone knows Swindon is just a horrific place. And it is technically a city, but it's not a fun place to visit.
It's not a fun place to stumble through blind drunk trying to find your way.
But looking at it, you know, when I was putting it together, that is the nearest city. But yeah, in terms of so I thought let's have them travel over, and let's have them arriving at the university being a more leverage talk. Let's have arriving itself being an adventure, and so there was a lot of things. Self-driving cars will make a difference to that sort of thing. Yes, definitely. So yeah, that's fun. And the site itself, I mean, I don't want to give away too much about what they're up against, but as soon as I found out it was that what they were after, and they were longing for particular things, I had to look up a particular myth that is associated with the United Kingdom, and is there anywhere in England that associated with that? And you know, about half an hour on Google, which is what I always do when I spend so much time on Google and Google Maps when I'm researching adventures. You know, I mean, I have spent hours in Eastland, Texas, on Google Maps, just because I wanted the description of getting to the place in Horror for the Holidays to be exactly right. You know, I want, for that one nutter out there who loves the adventure so much, because he's going to exist. If he's not there now, he'll be there soon. Who loves the adventure so much, he's going to make a pilgrimage. I want it to be as accurate as possible.
And then Chelsea will get emails. Why did you hire Owen?
Oh my God!
This turn was a quarter mile further than he said in the adventure.
And I will tell that person to fight me, and that will be the end of it.
Fight me in real life, bro. Yeah.
Let's go to a duel. We'll do it old fashioned. It'll be fun.
But yeah, I found out Uffington was a place where, or more to the point, the White Horse and that area was where these things was where a particular story relating to some of the good British myths could be found. And I thought, right, it's 2 hours drive. I'm getting in the car. Sod Google Maps. I'm going to go there. So as you saw from the video, myself and my parents, my wife, and then 4-month-old son all pile into a car, and we drive up to Uffington and have a picnic, which is nice. It was a lovely day out. And yeah, I film things all the time, because I mean all these things, you know, the DJing, writing adventures, this is what I do to keep myself sane. You know, when I was a full-time street performer, this is what I did when normal people were at work. But now it's, you know, now I actually have a real job, thanks to COVID. Well, actually, I jumped before COVID, and it was a very good timing, because a lot of buskers I know are in real trouble. Now
you have a real job, and everybody's staying home, so the world is entirely upside down. We have to.
It's mad, absolutely mad. Crazy. But it became just that kind of thing, you know. It's now the stuff that I do to keep myself happy and sane. I now know I have ADHD, which explains everything. You know, it's very difficult to diagnose in adults because it manifests so different to that stereotypical thing of ADHD that you see in the ETU rules, actually, in fairness, you know, the whole squirrel thing, you know. Although, in fairness, the thing in ETU about getting -2 to repetitive tasks actually is pretty fair. That kind of fits pretty well. You know, I have to find things to make. If I'm doing anything that's repetitive, I've got to find something else to keep it interesting, or I just won't get through it. But, you know, meanwhile, I'm making music, I'm DJing a thing, I'm, you know, filming myself up enough into it. But it was also a great way to take notes. It meant I didn't have to be writing stuff down the whole time, because I just looked over the footage and thought, oh god, yeah, there was that thing there. It's it's such a British face. It was something that not too hot, yeah. Well, I mean, obviously we did invent the language. Let's not be silly now, Jodie.
You robbed the language from several other languages.
Was Banter. But
English is not so much a language as it is an active crime scene.
Very active crime scene. A continuous.
I mean, in fairness, England is responsible for 90% of the horrors in the world over the last 2,000 years, so that's fair enough, really, when it comes down to it. You know, we are really, you know, the most evil country that ever existed when it comes down to it.
But you have tea, right?
I mean, you guys were catching up with us for a while there, but
yeah, we were trying. Yeah. We tried real hard to be like Daddy England.
Getting a bit off topic here, but I was once.
Well, I just think it's like the Mongolians didn't write a whole lot down, so when they forced everybody who used to live on the steppes off into Europe, like, you know, people just forget. They're like, oh yeah, no, all these countries over here really were all kind of jammed over into Western Europe, and it's like,
I'm not sure the Mongols were doing their thing for quite as long as we were, with attacking all those people with particularly sharp mangoes. I was once heckled in a street show by an American comedian, a reasonably famous once, actually, and he said to me, "Hey, British guy," because I was in New York, Washington Square Park at the time, Washington Square Gardens, sorry, very different place. And said, "Hey, British guy, how's it feel to lose an empire?" And I mean, one of the few times where I've actually had something prepared, as it were, for a heckle, or a bit that I've been wanting to use for ages, that had it in, and was able to come back and think, "Don't know, it wasn't there. How does it feel to be building one?" And it worked quite well. But yeah, anyway.
So where have you not been? Because I mean, so far you've been to the US, you've been to Australia.
South America. I've never done South America, and I've not done Antarctica. Obviously, those are the only two continents I've yet. I would love to do South America sometime, though, just to visit it, because, oh my god, I mean, reading about it now for the other project I'm doing, and also can't wait to see the stuff in Costa Rica, because I mean that's mostly Preston stuff, I know, but he had a consult on it. I know it's going to be pretty wild, and it's good that there's somewhere that it's not just all Europe, because, you know, it's pretty standard, I believe, for Americans to go Euro tripping during a study abroad yet, but the fact that it's not all just Europe is good, I think. Though watching the actual play the other day, the Italy chapter is going to be epic as well, clearly, because I don't think we've seen each other's chapters, as far as I'm aware.
No, they haven't compartmentalized. So.
And when I was thinking Torino, you know, why particularly Torino, and then realized, because of the oh god, I'd love to, because of the Greek and Italian and Egyptian connection. There's so much myth stuff going on in Torino. There's so much there.
Every time I hear about Italy, I get I get jealous. I mean, being in the UK, it's funny because I was born and raised in America, and I had never traveled outside the country until 5 years ago. And traveling outside the country and seeing all the history, like it's so hard to digest everything. Because you have thousands and thousands of years, and we're over here like 1774, baby.
Right. Eddie Izzard says, "I come from Europe, so that's where the history comes from." Yes,
right.
We have that. Like,
but there's so much myth, and there's so many old things. Like you have Hadrian's Wall, you've got chunks that you can see. You have chunks of Pictish stones. These
turn around the corner, there's a castle somewhere, probably.
Right? There's just history that you just stumble into. And as my boyfriend has said, like when he was in Rome, there were people walking past this like ancient wall, just pissed that it's in the middle of the road. Yeah. Like just absolutely upset that this old thing has affected their modern lifestyle. And
Rome is probably the most extraordinary city in the world for that kind of thing. Of you're in a modern chic Italian restaurant, and then 2 minutes later you're walking past something that's literally 3,000 years ago. I've never felt that anywhere quite as much as Rome. It's amazing the way everything's just sort of put in there. But yeah, Hadrian's Wall is a very evocative place. It's wonderful. But I mean, even just being able to drive 2 hours from London and there be this, Bronze Age chalk drawing on the White Horse that's
insane.
And I think what I loved about Uffington was just, it's such a small place, and there was so little, but there was still enough. I mean, real world stuff is so great for writing, as it were, because there was enough. There were all these little things I could just take and turn into stuff. It was amazing, and actually be able to be there rather than just read all about it.
Do you feel kind of like an experimental?
Sorry.
Do you feel kind of like an experimental archaeologist in that way, because you get to put all these little pieces kind of together?
Maybe, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, like as I said in the video, it's kind of become sort of a thing for me writing adventures. I like to use real world history or real world folklore, local legends, urban legends, that kind of stuff to inspire me. And as I say, this is my big advice to anyone out there who writes. Well, anything actually, write anything creatively, any kind of fiction. Read nonfiction, research nonfiction. Don't because if from reading nonfiction you will get hundreds of ideas will spark in your brain, real inspiration for ideas, your own ideas. Whereas if you only read fiction, the only ideas you'll have are other people's ideas. It's why fantasy can be a bit bland as a genre, because there's essentially everything is going to be rechurning itself, because it's all just coming from the state from fiction upon fiction upon fiction upon fiction.
It's amazing because I've never heard a writer say that.
Yeah.
I asked a bunch of writers for my podcast for like 2 years, what do you do when you have writer's block? And some people are like, I never have writer's block. And I'm like, how? But I've never heard somebody say go to nonfiction. But we were just saying the truth is stranger than fiction, right? Like,
and you will get, and the thing is, the spark you get from good nonfiction is going to that's going to turn into something incredible, that is so different to what you're even reading about, the subject in the first place. I mean, if you read the book on the Santa Claus bank robber by Tui Snyder, which is probably the most complete history of that thing that the Horrible Holidays adventure was based on. There's so much of that of what happened in the adventure is based on this real thing, but from that, so many other ideas and things became extrapolated and turned into something, as it were. Likewise for all the stuff in here. That hawthorn tree, that's just a little tree on the hill. It's a tree, but the fact that it was there on its own, and with nothing else around, I think, that it looks special, and from that, huge amounts of the plot of the British section of Study Abroad have come just from that the existence of that tree, and my mum, while we were there, pointing out, saying, hawthorns are a fairy thing, and I was like, really? I didn't know that. And then we did research, and yeah, they are. So yeah, So to answer the question, yes, I start them on the aeroplane coming in.
Fantastic.
What happens we go off, yeah.
Right, an hour in, we got one question down. That's a good ratio for us. No, but it's true. I mean, the in America, and I mean probably similar in Britain now, but there's a really big surge in popularity for true crime. Lots of podcasts have really gone for true crime.
Yeah,
right, and it's interesting because like you know. Because of that, there's people who are a lot more literate on like things like serial killers, and you realize that like Silence of the Lambs was horrible, like it was dreadful when I was a kid. I mean, like, oh my god, this is crazy. And then you realize, oh, it was tame. It was tame compared to the actual real world stuff it was built on. And you know,
Jeffrey Dahmer is quite a thing,
right? Yeah. And there's a great Devil in the White City one. We're about the guy who did this, you know, Chicago's World Fair.
He's the first American serial killer. H.H. Holmes. He's incredibly insane. That man was a monster, you know. And just the fact that folklore and serial killers, those mysteries really intertwine a lot.
They do, yeah. I mean, Jack the Ripper is a perfect example, of course.
Yeah. People are still trying to concretely find out who he was.
I mean, look what Pinnacle did with that. You guys turned that into an entire setting as well. Yeah. Wonderful setting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the Russian sailor theory behind Jack the Ripper. There's like this one guy who just, you know, he happened to be in the right spots at the right time. That kind of worked out. But that's one where, I mean, it's. That one I think will forever remain a mystery just because there were so many murders, but so little evidence, right? And so,
and a lot of missteps as well. Yeah. There were a lot of people in these places. I mean, we have, you know, Scotland Yard says they have evidence and they could try to link DNA, but where do you start? How many billions of us are there now?
And there's better things for them to be doing, to be honest.
Really, yeah.
You know, it would have to be essentially someone needs to do that. It's going to have to be privately funded with someone who probably are retired people in the police to.
It sounds like a James Cameron thing, right? Like it sounds like you need some like a guy who's like, I really like the Titanic, so I'm going to go spend $1 billion to film it and then make a movie on the side to pay for it. You know, someone's got to go and be like, yeah, this is the submission. But
it's been a lot of people's love for a really long time, right? Like there are Ripper experts out there, right? Like this is the cool thing that we get now is we get Ripper experts and we get historical fashion experts, and we get all these people solving all these little mysteries and these little myths that have prevailed throughout our cultures that they're busting like easily, right? So that we already know that, like, you know, Jack the Ripper was not H.H. Holmes. They were not the same person.
The word, exactly, a ripperologist.
But that's so cool. I mean, you have people who are looking up to like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and trying to emulate his rules of deduction to solve cases as well in the modern day. So we're looking to the past to help the present, but you still get that rich mystery. Whoever picks it up for the first time is going to have all those interesting emotions along the way, trying to solve it themselves. We love the unsolved.
Worth pointing out there actually on the nonfiction thing that, you know, it doesn't have to be reading nonfiction. You know, visiting a place, listening to podcasts, whatever you get those things. Well, anyway, for me anyway, that's where I find most of the inspiration that I use. Well,
there are definitely mystical places in the world too. I mean, people talk about, for me in particular, when I went to Culloden in Scotland, it is a heavy place. And I've also been to Gettysburg. It has that same heavy atmosphere. It is hard to breathe and it is hard to exist in that same space.
Going to the Circus Maximus as well in Rome actually is a similar thing. And Pompeii I found as well doing that kind of thing. It just I mean, you can think of it kind of anyway, whether you think of it as a sort of metaphysical thing or just the kind of I
just feel like it's an atmosphere, right?
Really put on it because of the associations that we have that it has for it, and when you got a lot of people in that, and any street performer can tell you, you know, people make atmosphere. You know, that's what changes things out there, and you have to tap into that whenever you're doing things that were attractive. Oh my goodness!
Oh no!
Sorry about that. My phone may have just fallen down off the impromptu perch I made for myself. In fact, a 60-foot serpent from Scotland. It is also a theory. Yes, he could be. And we don't do the Loch Ness Monster in Study Abroad, as far as I'm aware. But there is, I believe, I can't remember if there's a stat block, but there is certainly reference to knuckers, which are sea dragons, or lake dragons, as it were, in there. I think there might be stats. I can't remember now.
Well, so here's a question for you as a game master. Having just talked about the feeling of the weight and the mood, how do you bring that to a game? Do you have any techniques when you're running a game to get the players there?
Yeah, it depends entirely on what you're doing, but you treat it similarly to any kind of play, or any kind of performance. Essentially what it is, any performance is an exchange of energies between parties, not necessarily just that's why we use the word performance for so many different things. We talk about sporting performance, business performance, sexual performance, all these things. They're energy being exchanged between two or more people in some way, shape, or form. In a play, it is it's traditionally three people on the stage and the audience, or plus potentially chorus, or however many it is. And in a role-playing game, we have this incredible thing where the performance is coming two ways, as it were. The story is in control of the performers, and the audience is also controlling the performance, as it were. If you see it that way, it's the audience controls the plot, but the players control the character, or the performers control that, and the audience is amazing in that regard. But in those things, atmosphere, drama, that begins long before you get to the theatre, as it were. The drama of a play begins really from the moment you find out it exists. Not even that production. If I was to go to a production of Richard III, I'm going to have a very different experience to anyone else, because I am mad about that play. I've loved it since I was 14, and read it and seen so many productions of it, and know so much about the history and the play itself. And then on top of that, you have the venue, you have the journey there. I mean, Peter Brook put on a production of the Mahabharata in, oh God almighty, yeah, discount tense, yeah, very good. Pun of the evening so far, Jody. Peter Brook put on a production of the Mahabharata in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and the audience had to spend 2 weeks, I think, trekking to get to the space. Why did he do that? In order to create this incredible thing and to use that space to help enhance the atmosphere. Essentially,
I love that.
What I'm trying to get at here is that everything you do is going to affect the atmosphere at your table. Now, if you're trying to get things serious, as it were, and you've got a bunch of guys who just want to have a laugh, run a different adventure that night. End of. Don't try. If people are in a silly mood, go with it. Or see what happens. If
fight it tooth and nail.
Yeah.
Oh.
And take them for but I mean, there's essentially another thing is, like, if you're this was very true in the LARP as well. We, at the end of each year, we finished on a really big season finale, as it were, and usually we'd end up breaking people up into tables for sort of multi-tiered dungeon crawl, where one table was doing one part of it, doing another type thing, and like a street show, like a film being released or whatever, hype the hell out of that adventure you're going to run. If you're about to run the last adventure for your campaign, or you're about to one you're really, really big, hype it like mad to these people. Don't drop hints about it in character leading up to it. Drop and out of character too. Say, guys, a couple of months down the line, build it and build it and build it. So when they get there, before they've even arrived, they know what they're coming for, and they are on for it. You know, people that if you've been hyping up this big serious adventure, no one comes there expecting beer and pretzels. That they know, this people could die tonight. This is going to be a big one. You know, likewise, then you can go another level on top of that. Now they're coming in that atmosphere. Assuming they're coming to your place. This is, of course, I always my thing has always been the GM hosts, because then they can go to bed very easily afterwards, or get out. But in exchange, yeah, exactly. But in exchange, I cook the meal. Has always been my thing, and that in itself will add to the drama. The meal, if you eat a meal together, and meals are fantastic things for setting anything, is going to be part of it. But have them instead of having the usual thing where you're all just round a table and there's drinks and you've got a pizza. Tell them we're not eating tonight. Have something on your way. And then when they come in, it's candles and a friggin' and curtains and drapes, and you spent 2 hours preparing the place, and it, of course, you don't need to do anything, and it's done. Then on top of that, you've got the usual things of music and imagery that you can use, etc.
Have you ever used magic?
The confines of what you've got.
Okay, Landauer. You say magic. What Owen has been talking about is ritual, which is essentially magic anyway. I've been on this kick since quarantine, okay? You make your own magic in the world, right? And you do that through ritual, through intent, through your own actions. You create magic in your own world. I've been on this tirade for like a year and a half now. So.
Oh, absolutely. And as a magician will tell you, who actually knows, a magician who knows his stuff, a trick in itself is rubbish. Magic tricks themselves are incredibly boring. I mean, if you've seen, a guy in a bar trying to pick up girls, or your mad uncle do that one trick, they know it's exactly. Do you ever use tricks? Exactly. It's awful. It's horrible. It's embarrassing. It's awkward. It's terrible. But you look at a proper professional magician, and you can watch them do the same trick, and it's a completely different situation, because a good magician will turn it into a drama, will turn it into an event, will create something out of it, and that may be, just a what's it called? A rough theatre, a theatre of the rough, or something used. I can't remember. I'm thinking of Peter Brook again now in one of his books. I feel like talking about your act. But Paul is a magician friend of mine who I actually taught how to do street shows to an extent back in the day. Even if it's just a sort of fun thing because you're the entertainment in the bar, or you're the guy hired for the corporate event and so on, you're still creating that comedy drama, as it were, that comedy atmosphere out of things and so on, with the jokes you use, with the beats that you use, with the way you dress up the trick, so much as the presentation. Otherwise, it's not magic. No one's going to feel anything magical unless there's some kind of presentation. The best you're going to get is someone going, "Oh, I don't know how you did that," and that's not as good as David Blaine reactions of people screaming and running out the house and all that kind of stuff. Not always what you aim for, but it's nice to have now.
I do often have people screaming and running away from me, probably for different reasons. But I'll take any attention I can get. It's better than blank faced stares, right? So we weren't planning on going here, but I actually do think this is actually fantastic information for game masters on. I mean, I think one of the things is just take it seriously, right? Like, you do one thing that elevates what you're doing from. I mean, and I'm fine with beer and pretzels. Like, SWAT is a very beer and pretzels game.
Absolutely.
But you can run it like a police procedural and get serious. But yeah, I mean, just do one thing that's more serious, whether it's makeup or a prop or an attitude, like you said, like the beats of a trick and of a joke. The timing is very important. Even an accent is enough.
Or just tell the players this is where we're going tonight, and communication is key. It is not, if we're talking about us as a role-playing games of performance, we are very different in that we are actors and audience all together. We are. It's like a troupe. We're creating an improv play as it happens, as it were. Which, I mean, seriously, Aristotle would have wet his pants for this stuff. He would have gone.
Oh, yes. It's very.
I mean, talk about the ultimate catharsis. Just wow. I mean, it is. Let's not get me onto the subject of role-playing games as art, because for the experience it can be way more intense than any other art form in the world. But you are collaboratively creating a performance with the people at your table. You're all together in this. You're working together, and letting them know in advance we're going a bit darker this time, or of course, session 0, the thing that we all didn't know we needed 10 years ago, but now. And yes, LARP is a perfect example. You're creating the whole world. I mean, a LARP should be done well. A LARP should be sort of the ultimate ensemble, because you've got 40 people all working together to create a thing. And the guy in the LARP that everyone hates is always going to be the guy who's trying to become the protagonist, trying to be the protagonist of the scene. And right, Jim's, and a lot of the skill in being a games master at a LARP is ensuring you don't get those guys and getting rid of them quickly when you realise who they are.
I think as a player, though,
or they're there to try to win. That's the other worst thing you can get. But yeah, I mean, you can't with a tabletop. You have a lot more control of who you're playing with. Hopefully, if you've got enough friends. Whereas in a LARP, it's a lot more open. There's a lot more the thing like that. It does make plot a lot easier, because when there's 40 people in a room, you don't really need to create an event or a plan. Just throw
people at each other
into the mix and just watch them. It's just going to happen. And soon enough, and after the first game, people are going to want to be doing things with their characters, and other characters are going to hear about things that have happened as a result. And they'll create the plot for you. It's a very different world. But yeah. Crazy.
And that's an interesting question. So on that, as an RPG author, I think we almost feel compelled to have to put down adventures in writing for people, and that in any way it means railroading to some extent, and that term gets a negative connotation, which I think it doesn't deserve a lot of times. But there's even if like the improv side can be as much as set the stakes, set who the characters are, and let people go, right? That doesn't feel like people want to buy that, though, right? Like, I mean, there could be a lot of brilliant work in a here's the setup, people. Here's a challenge. We're not going to give you the resolution. We don't know how it plays, but these are the actors in the thing. Go, and that can be a very rewarding role playing experience. But I don't think it sells, because it doesn't read as traditional.
It's difficult to sell it in some ways. I think there are some examples, especially in the Savage community. Forget About It is a perfect example of in my opinion, and Aliens versus Rednecks being another one. I mean, they have the big advantage of they're funny. I mean, they're silly comedy one-shots, and in that regard, it's much easier to do something that's a lot more free form and sandbox in that regard. I'd say it doesn't have to be, though. I think the World of Darkness games lend themselves very much towards a sandbox experience, and in tabletop or in LARP, because it is very much you have created such. I mean, and if you've, God, there's so many books in World of Darkness. Oh my God, there's so many books. But if you know enough, or even if you just spend enough time yourself, you essentially are going to create a city with just so much lore that just let them go out for a night and they're going to bump into something. It's very good in that regard. And that, I mean, to an extent, that is how you sell, in my opinion, something bigger for something sandboxy, where it's just let them go and do their own thing. So I keep adjusting my glasses. You've got to sell it as this is a really big, in-depth world with so much stuff. And if you've got that, then that is something that people could buy and work into. In terms of writing an adventure, Sorry, I'll let you speak first, Chelsea, then I'll come on to that. Yeah.
As a creative person, I'm a theater kid. My parents are theater kids.
Yeah.
Rennies, all the things, right? As a creative person, there comes a point where you burn out on all the things that you can create with your own mind, even though they are extrapolations of other things that have been created in the past, right? Because we have so much out there. You know, at the end of the day, when you come home exhausted and you know you have to play a game, having all that little setup work done for you so that you can just launch and your brain can kickstart again to work on the next thing is a high selling point.
Absolutely. And for me, I think the real sweet spot lies in being able to write something that has enough of a through line of action, there's another theatre term, that the players can follow the rails if that's what they want, but you give enough to the games master that if they go in a different direction, you're covered. That was a thing that Preston actually taught me in Horror for the Holidays, that they need to, I mean, in Magic we call it outs. You need an out if the trick goes wrong. You need, what happens if the players do this? You know, because you could banish the spirit using a particular ritual, for example. And so I've got just a little bit in there that says, if they do that, fine, let it happen. And then over the next year, over the whole year, see that he's coming back. Little things that suggest that he's coming back, and then have him come back next Christmas. And take those stats and up them by 4 rank, by give them 4 advances, and make it clear that's not going to work anymore. And that's enough that's enough right there for the GM to be very happy the players chose that route, as it were. And little bits as much as you can just to spark imagination for the GM if they go in a different direction, as it were. And it's something you get good at with practice. Same with GMing, exactly right.
Because I think one of the big things about GMing that seems super daunting is people could go anywhere with anything. The trails that I could go off with my anxiety about the 50 different endings that I could get, and they won't even get there.
But this is the other thing. I mean, this is a huge advantage that we have got over every other performer in the world. We don't have a time limit here. If they don't get there in the first session, fine. You could stretch these adventures out for months if you want. In Study Abroad, coming back to the thing in Ascalon, one of the adventures I've written, you can run as an adventure, but it's designed to sort of be something you're seeding and slowly happening in the background throughout the whole thing, as it were. And they will hope, you can give them the first clue of the mystery in like the second session, and they get the next one the third session, and then between sessions they can be figuring that out, and then you can and then even if you were just running the others as one adventure every session, you would be able to fit the final bit of solving the mystery of that one into another adventure if you needed to. And that is a beautiful thing for us. And that's what I'd say to GMs who are worried about it going in any direction. Let it happen. If that's what players want to do, go for it. You're not in a rush. And and a very important thing, when the players always surprise you with N73, that right there. And it's brilliant. I love it. I love it when it happens. My favorite thing in the world is watching or listening to people run my adventures that aren't me, and seeing what happens and where players go with things, because it's amazing, and it's an incredible experience as for a writer, really, because it's not just like writing a play and then seeing different performances treated differently. It's an entirely new script every time you see it. It's brilliant in that regard. But and as long as if you've got get the antagonist clear when writing a thing, and clear what their plans are, and clear what their time frame is, and what's going to happen if they're not stopped. And then if the players don't get there in time, fine, let's run with that.
I know it's true. I mean, just thinking about how many interesting franchises are built off of that moment, the moment where the previous people in charge didn't stop what needed to happen. Right?
Of course. Exactly. There's an excellent example there, actually, from some friends of mine. They were playing they did a huge long campaign. I want to say it was Scion or something. It was a World of Darkness setting anyway. It might just have been Changing Breeds or something. But anyway, they got to the end and they lost. And because they lost, it ended up turning into a new Exalted campaign of Exalted, which is, World of Darkness on speed, if you've ever seen it. It's mad, it's brilliant. But again, Exalted trying to fix what went wrong in that. Sometimes, like you say, when things go wrong, there's so much you can do with that usually as well.
Right.
And
just
it's worth
the
putting that stuff
tension
into the adventure when you write it, I feel. Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely, right. And failure is an option, and it can be interesting as well. But just think of how many games are predicated on the basis of like preventing the apocalypse, and then how many games are post-apocalyptic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can bridge that gap if you want to. You can play with that and just see what happens if and it might be all new characters and it might be 500 years later or whatever it is. But
exactly.
You're kind of on either side of that nexus or singularity point. There's drama on either side, right? Either you solved it and it was a threat, or it was a threat and it fundamentally changed reality.
There's so much you can do whatever way you go. That essentially, when writing things and worrying about that railroading thing, that's my advice. Just give enough little sparks that the GM can go off on their own, and as a GM, just embrace it. I mean, you get very, particularly if you've got a story in mind, you can get very tied up in making sure that story is told. And the more you do this, the more you realize the best stories are the ones you let go. And it's great for GMing is fantastic for anyone who wants to write, because you will learn to let go of your story. You will learn to be all right with killing your babies and that stuff. Because if you're not, having been someone who struggled to be a published writer for 10 years trying to get novels out and stuff, I've learned, I learned how difficult and how important it was to kill your babies and to drop the bits you love the most to make the story better. And I mean, as a GM, the stuff that the dice will do to you, that will create the stories, random odds will create, plus 6 characters that you can't control. You literally have no control over the characters. Oh, it gives you just a completely new understanding of what makes story and so on. And the bits we always remember are when things went off track. Those are always the stories we're going to tell and bore our non-role playing game friends with time and again, are going to be usually the ones where things went off the rails, went off track.
It's true.
Strange happened, and that's the nice memories are made.
I often say that, the storybook wedding is the most boring thing on the planet. Everybody was thin and beautiful. The food was delicious and unremarkable. Yeah. And okay, great. You had a catalog book wedding. It was the Land's End or whatever it is, But when the dress catches on fire and you catch a bridesmaid and a groomsman in the closet and the cake explodes and the little kids are cute, but one of them takes off their clothes. Right, that's the one that's the fun wedding. That's the one that's still when the priest falls over from getting way too blasted at the bar afterwards. Like these are the stories, not everybody was respectful and the speeches were all very short. Right, yes.
I will say that until I played Savage Worlds, played a lot of Pathfinder and D&D, and it's very much about the heroes, and they will prosper and they will win. I have not had a character die yet. Shane is coming for me. I know he wants to kill one of my characters any day now, and it's going to happen. All right.
Run him through Ascalon. Because that last adventure can go, doesn't necessarily have to. If the players thought, because the first time I never ran it actually. I've only this is actually another tip. Sorry, pro tip for writers writing role playing games: get someone else to play test your stuff. because they will find things that you would not have found, because you in your mind know more about this than anyone else, and you need to know what it's going to be like when it goes out to the wild. So the more people who aren't you can get to play test it, the better, and get them to record it and listen to it, because A, it's really good fun, and B, you're going to pick up on loads of little things. But yeah, the first play test, they realized just, oh my god, this could go so wrong. But yeah, there's 2 adventures in there that can be, they're a good 7 out of 10 on the Goff meter, I believe.
Oh.
Well, considering that the Goff meter goes up to an entire train full of automatons and vampires that can kill any player character almost in one round. Yeah, 7 is a pretty good number.
Yeah, 7's pretty good. Yeah, Night Train on Deadlands Classic is 10 out of 10.
Oh,
yeah. Night Train in Reloaded, when you've got a Blessed with Holy Warrior, is a different adventure. It is not nearly as scary, which is a shame, because that thing is horrible. But yeah, but that said, the wild cards friggin' nailed it when they did it. Oh my god, perfect.
Well, and right now that's very interesting. Just kind of the world we find ourselves in now, where it's like, when you're an RPG author, you are removed from your audience and you're putting things out on paper, so it is very deterministic. When you're an RPG player and a game master, you have the 2-party cooperative experience where you're improvising with each other. And then when you're live playing, you bring in the 3rd-party audience as well.
I know, right? An entirely new thing, and when you allow those through stream to interact with it as well, and that's where Brecht would have wet his pants at that point. It was all that bit, I think. But yeah, so, sorry, I'm really theatre nerding out on the thing tonight. I can actually reveal on that, because theatre nerd. The Glenn Mack of Ascalon University, as it were, is the theatre professor.
Fantastic, nice.
Based on the idea that Antonin Artaud, who is an wonderfully mad theatre theorist from France from the 40s, the idea that his manifesto for the theatre of cruelty was, and Le Jet de Sang, his completely unperformable play, was actually a ritual in disguise. A theory.
I love it.
Right theory, really good for magic.
I kind of love that idea. So now I have to go back through all of my freshman year psych, and and Nietzsche and Nietzsche, and yes, when the darkness does look back at you, maybe that's actually a monster there.
You could totally make Nietzsche, no problem.
Well, right. I mean, the entire superhero genre is basically fantasy on Nietzsche and whatever. Now, I love this, man. We need to get you back on and talk more about theory, because that's an unexpected fun thing about this.
I'm feeling a little guilty that we haven't talked much about the actual product, and I think I'm meant to get to sell that somehow.
Oh, so let's just to close it up. Sell it. Sell us on what you wrote. Any parting thoughts? Tell us about the actual product.
So like I say, I mean, everything you see in Ascalon will be is based in reality in some way, shape, or form. The locations that aren't, except for the university itself, are all real. Lambourne, there's an adventure base there. It is a real place. John Betjeman was someone who lived in Uffington for a long time. We made him someone who was a fellow of the university in there. There's a not so much secret society. They're sort of a British fraternity. We don't really do Greeks in Britain, but but there are societies become very cliquey in a way, but they're more kind of extracurricular activity type societies. And some of this can feel like France, but there's the Tom Brown Society, which is a society for gentlemen who try to keep themselves in the proper English manner, like Tom Brown from Tom Brown's School Days, which is a book written by a man who lived in Uffington, which is actually quite famous, and a series of much better books about the antagonist of that book were then created by someone else called Flashman. And then on top of the actual adventure, I done my thing of trying to put as many. Flashman does make an appearance, sort of makes an appearance. Because of course the society has a secret side to it, and the the heavy person who is in charge of sorting out messes for the society is known as the society's flashman, in reference to that. But yeah, there's lots, every little part of Uffington, or more to the point of the university, every fictional building, every little thing like that, I've tried to seed little things that you can do something else. Like there's no actual adventure happens in the science building, the what is it, Alfred Science Building, I think it's called, which is named after this mad Scottish scientist, real life mad scientist who tried to animate people, animate bodies with electricity, and managed to get arms twitching. There's somebody arms twitching. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, really did that. So obviously there's a secret basement in that lab where they're trying to reanimate the dead. Of course there is.
Of course.
And that's there in the that they got spoiler for players, but that's it there in the GM section. I mean the whole thing's GM section, of course, but that's noticed. But there isn't an adventure there. It's just or there isn't an adventure that I've written there. It's a tale, but there are lots of stuff for you to create your own things in. One thing I think, and this is to buy the book all together, if you are a GM or you're a player who's been through Degrees of Horror and you're looking for an excuse to get the band back together again, what better master's program could there be than a tour of 4 universities?
That is true.
There are plenty, doing a master's in world folklore or something like that, and traveling to these 4 things as part of that as an outreach program. You might have more chance of surviving some of the nastier adventures as well. But I think that could be a really fun way to run study abroad. Is as sort of a shorter campaign on top of the campaign that you finished a few years ago and want to go back to the world, as it were. And it wouldn't be hard, I would think, probably to find a way of just like kind of linking because they're all sort of mini settings in themselves, to kind of find a way of linking them together that way into an overarching plot.
Yeah. Gilbert was talking about the Erasmus program that's in Europe that is very much like that. Where
exactly.
Yeah, and even that, just even look up. I mean, Erasmus appears in the Marginalia setting that I'm in writing, and it's one of the backgrounds, and he's a fantastic, interesting, inspirational person too. But I love it. One of the first comments we got on ETU Study Abroad was, is this going to be a graduate school thing? Because I finished my characters, and it would be trivial to be able to turn it into a very compelling graduate program.
All I would do is put a top and tail adventure. Basically, have some either whoever's in charge of the program, or have some antagonist who is, maybe the players pick up an artifact in each of the 4 things, and by bringing them back to the particular professor, that gives him what he needs to open the gate. So blah 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 blah. You're on. You're good. You can use that in order to, and you can even tie it into the Degrees of Horror campaign. There's plenty of things you could use to bring it back to that if you wanted to. That's stuff that's not there, but it's not hard for you to go to do that. And I think there's so much you can. And even this is the other thing with any book, with any RPG book you get, even if you don't run it, there's so much in there that you're going to be able to take and use for whatever the hell else you run. There's reading these, and I know, having seen the stuff in Torino and having heard some of the things about Costa Rica, I know there's going to be such a wealth in all those as well. And I know that I don't know exactly what goes down in Poland. I'm pretty sure I know what myth he's tapping into as the big myth. And I know Ron Blessing is a huge fan of the Poland setting, having read it, and if Ron thinks it's good, it's going to be good. It's going to be really good. So definitely, if you're an ETU fan, you'd be nuts not to get in now on it, as it were.
And that's really a perfect close for us, guys. There's the link is in the chat. It's on Game on Tabletop. I think let's go check in right now and see where we're at. I think we got we're closing in on 300 backers, and we during the stream we went from 12,000 to 13,000. So my
work here is done. Brilliant.
Right?
13 is a good number, yeah.
We're done. Thank you, everybody. Closing up shop. But, I mean, I think Owen gave you about 45 good reasons to pick up the book. I love the fact that he used to read between the lines what he said about linking the adventures and dropping the hints and the locations, the authenticity, and then all those fantastic game master tips on just how to bring the actual game to that next level by treating it like a performance and sharing the energy. And we even did a little bit of banter. So
we did do banter. There was some banter. There was definitely some banter. Thank you, Steele. Yes.
Owen, pitch your stream, man. What's your Twitch stream?
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. So, I do have a stream I do on always every Wednesday at 4:00 British time, which is, I want to say 11. Oh God, no, I'm not going to say what it is because I don't know. This daylight thing change everything. I think it must now be noon Eastern Standard Time, I guess. It was the idea was drive time in the United States and drive time in Britain and breakfast show in America. But it's just music radio, as simple as that. It's called The Lockdown. I do it because I enjoy DJing. I don't make anything out of it. I can't. It's but I can say royalties are paid for all the tracks through Mixcloud because everything goes up onto Mixcloud afterwards. And there's the streaming law itself is actually, I'm not going to go into it because we're here for hours, but it's all above board. I can tell you, having spent a lot of time researching. But it's a mix of all kinds of music of any sort, really, at the 4:00 thing. There's a lot of rock in there, but there's also I play a lot of reggae, a lot of ska, and yeah, we go into folk, country, whatever the hell I'm in the mood for. Really, it's purely for my amusement, and there's a few people who are also amused by it. And then sometimes on Tuesday nights I do a nighttime show called The Night Shift, which is much more that kind of sort of late night R&B, hip hop stuff, and I try and do a voice, that kind of thing.
Everybody loves the answer.
But yeah, it's just the stream's really just for my own amusement. But do feel free to follow me. It's at Owen Lean on Twitch, and yeah, watch this space because there is more stuff coming from me soon. I have. Am I allowed to talk? I know
Absolutely.
I'm allowed to, but I don't know if I'm allowed to talk here. Right? Okay. So this is the first I've been allowed to say this. I'm very excited about it. But for what should have been a 3-month project turned into a year project because, funnily enough, it's really hard to write when you're in a 2-bedroom flat with 2 toddlers all day during COVID. Turned into a year, but we're nearing. We're at the point anyway where I'm allowed to talk about it. I have been working on a pulpy Victorian steampunk setting for Triple Ace Games called Leagues of Adventure, and if I think I'm allowed to say it is a conversion, but it is also an update to the setting as well.
That is fantastic. Triple Ace Games puts out some of the best Savage Worlds
very
products.
Exciting. And there's going to be it's going to be one of those things that even if you don't play it, there's going to be a lot there you're going to be able to just take and use forever. Put it into rippers, stuff you can put into rippers, stuff you can put into their bands, etc. And then after that, I'll be going back to working on my own things for a while. Codename Austin Thulu is all I'm saying about this.
I love that. Sounds fantastic.
We'll talk more about that another time.
Fabulous, darling. It's got the shag carpet and the shagging demons. Yes, wonderful. Right, but see, that's not profane in the United States. So no. we can say words that like rhyme with Manny and like Lanny and whatever. They're fine here. They're profane.
That one's not really that profane.
Okay. That's good.
It's only as much as Willy is a slang for the boys' bit.
Okay, that's fine.
It's like a thing kids say. Yeah.
So if you want to go to boarding school and meet some John Thomases, Barkington Hall, School for the Elite, it's on Drive-Thru RPG. Good friend Sarah Martinez quips that it's short but sweet and full of flavor, like a good PG Tips. I mean Earl Grey. I mean Darjeeling. A good Darjeeling. And East Texas University. It is on Game on Tabletop now. You could be the 271st backer if you click pledge right now, and you'll get to Owen.
That's the important number.
Right, it is 271 is where all hell breaks loose. And like we said,
as we say on the streets, if no one else backs it after that, the last one is the lucky one. And if someone does back it, another person does back it, remember the last one is still the lucky one.
Exactly, and
having your pledge counts as becoming the last one. Yeah.
And if you are the
Still
secret backer, Owen might actually teach you a trick or two.
Yeah.
To improve your busking game.
Absolutely.
Well, wonderful, guys. Thank you for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. And Owen, we'll have you back on the stream to talk about game theory because we always
anytime.
It was fantastic.
I can do this for days. Definitely, it's been amazing. Thank you so much, guys. All the best.
Cheers.